Hello everyone. Welcome back to another OWAS Patna session. Thank you for joining us. Today we have Saurabh Kashyap as a speaker. He'll be talking about advanced persistent threat, which is also known as APT. To be honest, APT is a very broad term and an elaborate concept for security enthusiasts. Saurabh works as a cybersecurity analyst with a solid foundation in threat analysis and incident response. Hi Saurabh, how are you?
Yeah, hi Alia. Thank you. I'm good. What about you?
I'm great. Thank you for joining us today. So, Saurabh, we are very excited for today's session. There's a very quick detail for everyone. We'll be having the Q&A towards the end, so everyone keep your questions ready. Over to you, Saurabh. You can start.
Okay. Thank you, Alia. Thank you so much. Hi everyone. So guys, today we are going to discuss about topic called advanced persistent threat. That's we shortly call APT, right? So my name is Saurabh, and I have 3+ years of experience as a cybersecurity analyst. Along with cybersecurity analyst, I'm also a trainer, a cybersecurity trainer. So today's topic of APT, advanced persistent threat, where we are going to learn about and cover these topics. The first one is the introduction to APT, where we learn about what exactly this APT, what are the characteristics and life cycle, the key difference between APT attacks and the traditional attacks. Then we have some case studies. Then after, we will jump to learn about the mitigation strategy against the APT attack. And the last one, that's the future trends in APT landscape. So we all are aware about the cyber attacks, right? So what kind of attacks you guys aware about, like a malware attack and password cracking, system hijacking, right? Social engineering. Then we have a DOS attack, DDoS attack, like okay, RC. How many of you heard about the APT attack? So if we talk about the APT attack, so it's a cyber attack or it's a type of cyber attack in which a highly skilled and organized group or individual having some objective, right? Some specific objectives to gain unauthorized access to a target network or system. And the most important thing is that to remain undetected for an extended period. It could be like for a year, for a couple of months, okay? And for forever, even forever is also possible with APT attack, right? So that's your APT attack. If we talk about the normal attack, like you are talking about the DOS attack or session hijacking and phishing, right? So they are the target simply going to attack and fulfill the motives, and that's it. But if we talk about the APT, that's the advanced persistent threat. So here we have three terms. The first one is the advanced, right? So advanced, that means exploiting a zero-day vulnerabilities. Like now, what is this zero-day vulnerabilities? So we have two kind of vulnerabilities. One is known vulnerabilities. Second one is the unknown vulnerabilities. So known vulnerabilities simply means whenever any attacker, any cybersecurity engineer or analyst going to find out any loopholes in any network, any system, or any applications, right? So after that, some organizations like MITRE, so they are going to acknowledge the vulnerability in their CV database. So that kind of vulnerabilities is known as known vulnerabilities, right? But if we talk about the unknown vulnerabilities, so no one is aware about that. So that's something called zero-day vulnerability. Okay. So if we talk about the term advanced in APT, so advanced simply means exploiting the zero-day vulnerability or using sophisticated malware that designed to evade the detection system. Detection system just like your IPS, your IDS, and firewall. If we talk about the persistent, okay. So persistent, that means a long-term presence within a target network or system. Like unlike your cyber attacks, which are quick and opportunistic, APT maintain a persistent foothold, often remaining undetected for an extended period, sometimes months or years or forever, right? So they are going to maintain the access in the system, in the network for a couple of months, for a couple of years, right? And the last one is the threat. So threat, we all aware about the term threat, right? So a malicious actors, groups, or entities conducting the cyber attack and their intent, capabilities, and motivations, right? So we are going to discuss more about this threat later on. Now let's talk about the characteristics of the APT. So if we talk about the characteristics, so we have persistence. As I told you, persistence, that means maintaining a long-term presence in the target network, right? So here, the threat actor, while maintaining the access in the target system, the threat actors is not destroying the systems for the targeted network. Now, what it means, I'm going to repeat it, the threat actor is not going to destroy the systems of the target network. Why so? Like here, the main motive is to maintain the access and the target system. So if the attacker going to destroy the system of the target network, then there is a possibility that the organizations or the target are going to know about that something happening in our network, right? So they will be captured, right? But the main objective is to maintain the access. So that's why the threat actor not going to destroy any system, even they are not going to interrupt the normal operation of the target network. Normal operation, that means whatever the operations anything happening with the database or any CPU utilization process, right? So they are not going to interrupt there, right? If they are going to interrupt there, then there is a possibility that they will be aware about that something happening in our network, right? Even the threat actors going to keep themselves hidden for a term until they successfully execute the attack and fulfill their objective behind the attack. Now, the next one is the advanced techniques. So advanced techniques that include spear phishing, zero-day exploits, watering hole attacks, malware, lateral movement, data exfiltration, command and control, LOL attacks, supply chain attacks, and cobalt strike framework. Okay. Now let's discuss about them one by one. So let me talk about the spear phishing. So we all heard about the phishing attack, right? Where the attacker going to send you a malicious link, you are going to click there, and they are able to harvest your credential like your username and the password. Okay, so let's talk about the spear phishing. Spear phishing is like a targeted email scam. Instead of sending a generic scam email to many people, the attacker sends a personalized personal email to a specific individual, or you can say the target. They are pretending to be someone they trust. Like you guys heard about like a cyber crime where the attacker are going to create an account with your name, right? And going to ask your family members or your relatives that I am this person and I need that much amount, right? Your family members or your relative going to trust that person since the person act like you, exactly act like you. In the same way, in the spear phishing, the attacker going to send a mail, a malicious mail having a phishing link, right? And they act like they pretend like that the mail coming from the legitimate person. Let's suppose they act like your company manager. They are going to send a mail from the manager account and going to say you to just click on this link. It will easily trust yours since the mail coming from your manager, right? So that's something called the spear phishing. The goal of the spear phishing is to trick the person to reveal the sensitive information or clicking on a harmful or phishing link. So that's your spear phishing. Now, if we talk about the zero-day exploit, so as I told you that we have two kind of vulnerabilities. The first one is the known, and second one is the unknown vulnerabilities. So if someone going to exploit the unknown vulnerability, that's called zero-day exploits, right? So just imagine that you have a secret door in your house that only you aware about. Only you know that there is a secret door in my house. But in case if someone finds and use the door before you even know it exists, so that's like a zero-day expert in a computer program, right? So it's a secret way for hackers to get into software or systems before the creators or the developers know about the vulnerability in the target system, in the system or the network or the application. So basically, in a simple term, I can say that zero-day exploits where you are going to exploit the unknown vulnerability. Next one is the watering hole attack, right? Just imagine like a bank of river where the animals gather to drink water. In a similar way, the hackers target website that they know their intended victims frequently visit. There is a website like you can consider an example of the IRCTC website, right? Where we go to book our tickets. So the target know that you are going to visit that website, right? So they compromise that kind of website and use them to deliver the malware to your computers, to the victim's computer, right? To the visitor computers, to the traffic, and infecting them without their knowledge. right? They're not aware about that. That's like just like the animals who are visiting, who are like on the bank of the river to drink the water. They are not aware about that something malicious in the water of the river. Same like with the watering hole attacks, right? Now the next one is the malware. So malware, we all aware about the malware term, like a malicious software, like your virus, worms, and Trojan, right? Ransomware is also a part of the malware family. So malware is nothing. It's like a digital virus. It's a software that hackers create to harm your computer or steal your information. The malware get into your system, into your computer when you downloaded files or visit the infected websites, and it can do all sorts of bad things like stealing your password or damaging your files. Now let's talk about the lateral movement. So just imagine you are in a big building with lots of rooms. Okay, in a hotel you can imagine, right, where there are a lot of rooms, and you are trying to get into a specific room, right? You are trying to change your room, but the room is locked. Lateral movement in cybersecurity is when hackers, after gaining access to one part of a network or computer, and try to find other locked rooms or access or area to access and to find out the like within the system. You can say like you are in the target system and you are trying to change the directory from one directory to another directory. Like if you guys are aware about the Linux file system, so there we have a couple of directories. Like let's suppose you are inside the home directory, but you try to get inside the root directory, right? But the directory is locked. Locked, that means you don't have the permission to access the directory, right? But you are trying to do that. So when you are trying to unlock more doors to get deeper inside, so that's something called lateral movement. When you are inside the target system and you are trying to change the directory, that's called the lateral movement, right? Now let's talk about the data exfiltration. So a data exfiltration is like a digital heist. It's when a hacker secretly steals valuable information from a computer or a network and get it out without anyone noticing, right? The stolen data could be anything. It could be confidential file or personal information, right? So you are simply going to filter out the data on the basis of the requirement, on the basis of the objectives. Next one is the command and control, or simply you can say C2. So command and control is like a control center where the bots, or the you can say like spy bots, whatever the infected device collected by the collected by the attackers. So they are going to create a command and control center. From the command and control center, they are going to handle whatever the bots they have, whatever the compromised device they have. Right. Next one is the LOL attack. That's the living of the land attacks. So just imagine a thief breaking into your house and using only the things you already have in your home to steal your valuable informations, your valuable stuffs inside the house, right? In the digital world, living of the land attacks are when hackers use the existing tools and softwares on your computer or network to carry out their attacks, right? So whatever the tools that already installed or that's already present in your system, the attacker going to use that tools, that that tools they are going to use that's already present, that's already available in your system, right? So that's something called living of the land attack. Next one is the supply chain attack, right? So just imagine a car assembly line. If a bad part is inserted into one of the cars, right, it can affect all the car down the line, right? Supply chain attacks are like this in the digital world, where the hackers compromise a trusted supplier software or hardware, and when organizations use these compromised products, they introduce secretly vulnerabilities into their system, right? Like around 2015, I remember like one of the Chinese organization. So they are supplying hardware components to the like a computer manufacturing industry, right? So by default in the hardware, they install some kind of malware. Right? So whoever going to purchase the software, by default, they are infected with the hardware components because on the hardware components, the malware is pre-installed there. Right. Now the next one is the Cobalt Strike framework. So a Cobalt Strike framework is nothing but it's like a toolkit for hackers. It's like a set of specialized tools that cyber criminals can use to get into your computer systems, control them, and steal information. So that's your Cobalt Strike framework. So these are the techniques used by the uh, actors to perform APT attacks. And now the next one is the tools. So what are the different tools the attacker or the cyber criminals use to perform the APT attacks? So they are like your exploitation tools. So exploitation tools like your exploit frameworks, like your Metasploit, like your Cobalt Strike that we just talked about. So they are the popular and famous exploitation tools. So the attacker use this exploitation tools. Even they use zero-day exploits that something they have to write down the code or write down the script to exploit the zero-day vulnerabilities, right? One of the popular directly by offensive security that's called the exploit database. So there you can find out a lot of exploits related to the known vulnerabilities, not related to the unknown vulnerabilities. For unknown vulnerabilities, you have to create your own exploit. That's called the zero-day exploit, right? Next one is the malware and remote access tools. So malware, like you can say the rat, remote access trojans, like NGRAT. We all heard about the NGRAT. Even you can create a payload with the help of Metasploit, right? So even the backdoor is also part of the malware and remote access tools. Your command and control center, your command and control server. So they are the part of the malware and remote access tools. Credential theft and dumping tools. So there we have password cracking tools like John the Ripper and Hascat. So that's something used by the attackers to perform the APT attacks. Credential dumpster tools. Then after they are using steganography tools to hide something behind the picture or behind any files. Lateral movement tools. So we just discussed about the lateral movement. So lateral movement. So in the lateral movement tool, if, we talk about the RDP tools. They are using the remote desktop protocols to access other system within the network. So there is a network or the attacker almost there or inside the system, inside the network. But inside the network, a lot of system there. So the attacker can use the RDP tools to get access of the whatever the connector system in the target network. Evasion and anti-forensic tools. So there we can use rootkits, we can use antivirus evasion tools, we can use timestamp tools. Okay. Exfiltration tools like there we can use the file transfer protocols like FTP, SFTP, and SCP for data exfiltration. Then after we have information gathering and recon tools. So a lot of recon tools available in the market like Whois and all, right? So with the help of that, you can collect and gather information about your target. Next one is the phishing and social engineering tools. So we have SET toolkits that by default installed in your Kali and Parrot. So the attackers or the cyber criminals, so they are using phishing and social engineering tools to cheat with you to to create a phishing link and send to the target so that they can click there and they can get the credentials like username and password. Customized tools. So on the basis of the requirements, on the basis of the target, the attackers going to create their own tools, create their own framework, okay, to get inside your system to break down the system, okay, to perform APT attacks. So these are the different tools and techniques used by the attackers to perform APT attack. And now the next part is the targets of the APT attack. So the question is like, who will be the target of the APT attacks? So the targets of the APT attacks will depend on the objectives and motivation of the threat actors behind the attack. Whatever the motivation and objective that carry out the attack, like the targets will depend upon the objectives and the motives behind the attack. Not behind the attack, behind the threat actors, right? Because the attack is directly or indirectly associated with the threat actors. So that simply depend on the motive and objective of the threat actors, right? A lot of objectives could be possible behind the attack, behind the APT attacks, but some of the common objectives like government organizations, right? It's not about the objective, it's about the targets, right? Objective we will cover after this slide. So the common the common targets of the APT attacks could be the government organization, right? They could be they can target the financial or fintech industry. They can target the healthcare organizations, the edtech industry, the geopolitical targets, the media, the even the individuals they can target. Okay, so that depends on the motive and the objective. Now, what could be the motive behind the APT attacks? So the motive, or you can say the objective behind the APT attacks. So they are like espionage, data theft. These are the objectives. So let's discuss them one by one. So if we talk about the espionage, right? So the espionage refers to the practice of secretly gathering information obtained of a confidential, political, military, or industrial nature, typically for the benefits of government, organization, or individual. The APT attackers their aim to gather secret or confidential information, similar to the spy in the movie, right? So what they are doing, they are collecting information about the targets. In the same way, the threat actors, they are also collecting the confidential information, right? Uh, for their nation, for their personal benefits, or for the organizations who carry out this attack. This information could include the government secrets information, military plans, or corporate strategies, right? Now here we are talking about the government secrets, military plans, or corporate strategies. Because we are talking about the APT attacks, we are not talking about any normal attack, right? So in the APT attacks that carry on by organizations, it's not the APT attack. That the first thing have to remember that the APT attack is not carry on by a individual. APT attacks requires a group of attackers, some financial, some sponsorship, right? Because that will take a lot of time. Why so? So when we will cover the like a life cycle of the APT attack, so there it will more clear. Now let's focus here. So next one is the data theft. So in the data theft, the APT attackers want to steal valuable data such as the personal information, like your credit card numbers, trade secrets, or sensitive company information. They can use this stolen data for various purposes, like selling it for profit on the dark web, right? They can sell it out to your competitors. Like recently, we guys heard about attack on the Uber, right? So those who collect the data from the Uber. So what they are doing with the data? They are simply going to sell the data on the dark web, and who are going to purchase the data? So their competitor like Ola and Rapido. So they are going to purchase the data because they are the competitor. They require your information for the advertisement. Next one is the intellectual property theft. So the intellectual property theft is the unauthorized and unlawful act of taking someone else's intellectual property for the benefits or profits without permission from the owner. So without your permission, just think like someone copying your brilliant invention or your secret recipe, whatever you have created, that's unknown to the world, but someone going to steal it out, right, for their own benefits. So that's something called intellectual property theft. Next one is the disruption and sabotage. So disruption and sabotage refer to deliberate actions taken to interrupt, damage, or interfere with the normal functioning of systems. Systems, like you can say, like the system, the process, or the organizations or activities. So whatever the normal process already happening there, right? But you are going to interrupt there. You are going to damage their ongoing process, their normal process, right? So these actions can be carried out by various regions that can include the political, ideological, or malicious motives. Right? If like someone messing up your computer or your favorite game just to cause chaos, like you are playing a game on your computer and someone like a randomly someone going to interrupt you just for a chaos, right? So the APT attackers may want to disrupt operations or cause problems for organizations or systems with the help of disruption and sabotage objectives. Now let's talk about the long-term controls. So that's the motive behind the APT attack, to be inside the target system for a long term until and unless they fulfill their objective. So the long-term control, where the APT attackers want to maintain control over compromised system for extended periods. It's similar to an intruder secretly living in your house, constantly monitoring and potentially causing harm over time, right? So they are continuously they are inside your network, inside your system for a long term, right? And continuously they are harming like depend on the objective, depend on the time to time, they are continuously doing any kind of attack inside the system since they are already in the targeted system, right? Next one is the geopolitical goals. So the APT attackers might work for a country and try to gain an advantage in politics, like funding out what other countries are planning. Like recently, we witnessed a war between the Russia and the Ukraine, right? So there is a possibility that the Russia going to perform an APT attack on Ukraine just to know that what exactly they are doing, right? So that's also one of the objective behind APT attacks. Now the criminal collaboration. Criminal collaboration, that means whatever the APT actors or attack actors, so they are going to create a team to perform a particular attack. Like let's suppose there are three attackers, three cyber criminals, right? They are going, their objective is same. Let's suppose their objective is to hack BGP, right? Now they are going to create a team, create a group. They are going to do a collaboration, okay? And now they are going to work upon that. They are going to plan to how to hack BJP or how to hack Congress, right? So that could be one of the motive behind the APT attacks. Next one is the reconnaissance and mapping. So the APT attackers or the normal attackers, you can say, or cyber criminals, they are going to perform recon, or you can say the information gathering part, whatever the information about the target organization, so that they can, on the basis of that information, they can perform attack, right? Next one is the financial gain. So financial gain, that means like it's one of the objective behind the APT attacks, where the attackers trying to steal money from a bank, right? Might be possible the attackers aim or the objective to get rich. That's also possible, right? So they might steal money directly or use stolen information to make a profit. Information like already they have the credit card information. They just have to bypass the two-factor authentication and that's it, right? So that's your financial gain. That's one of the objectives behind the APT attacks. So these are some of the common objectives behind any APT attacks done by the threat actors. Now, the next one is the APT versus traditional attacks. So traditional attacks, that's something you mentioned in the chat section, like we have DOS attacks, we have malware attacks, phishing and all, right? So that's something you can consider as a traditional attacks. So we can differentiate both the APT and the traditional attacks on the basis of three parameters. That's your objective, and that's the sophistication and the duration. So if we talk about the objectives, right? So what will be the objective behind the normal traditional attack? So behind a normal traditional attack, such as the worms or ransomware, right? So their objective is to steal money, to disrupt the service, to cause damage, right? For the personal gain, for the political benefits or the political beliefs, right? So for that reason, they are performing traditional attack. But if we talk about the APT, right? So APT have long-term goals as compared to your traditional attacks. They have a short-term goal. So the APT have long-term goal, often involving espionage. That's something we already covered. Data theft or maintaining a persistent presence in the network. They focus on stealth, information gathering, and remaining undetected for extended periods. So APT are highly sophisticated and well-organized attacks. They employ advanced tactics, custom malware, and often have significant resource. They adapt their strategy as needed. If we compare the traditional attack with sophisticated attack with APT attack, right? So traditional attacks are typically less sophisticated as compared to the APT attack. They often rely on known vulnerabilities. As I told you that we have two kind of vulnerabilities, known and unknown vulnerability. So unknown vulnerability is a part of APT attack, where the attacker is going to target a unknown vulnerability. Okay, that's something called zero-day vulnerability. So they simply find out the zero-day vulnerability whose patch is not available in the market. Since if someone find a zero-day vulnerability, a zero-day exploit, then they can like exploit any system easily because there is no patch available in the market, right? If we compare the sophistication level of the traditional attacks, right? So traditional attacks they are typically less sophisticated, right? So they depend on the unknown vulnerability. Sorry, the known vulnerability. That's the patch already available in the market. Even their exploit that's already available in the market, right? So let's suppose there is a known vulnerability in the market, but your organization is not going to patch the vulnerability. The patch is available in the market, but your organization by default, like you can say, because of some other tasks, your organizations forget to patch the vulnerability, right? Now the attacker going to exploit that known vulnerabilities, which patch is already available in the market, but because of some uncertainty, your organization is not able to patch the vulnerability, right? So that kind of attack carry out in the normal traditional attack, right, as compared to the APT attack. If we talk about the duration, so as you know that APT attack remain in your system for a long duration, for a long period of time, right? But if we talk about the traditional attacks, so they are often short-lived and aim for quick results. So as soon as possible, they get their output, they will going to perform clearing the track, and that's it, right? Like you guys familiar with the 5 pages of ethical hacking, so that's something performed by a normal attacker while performing the traditional attacks, right? So that's how traditional attacks are different from the APT attack. Now let's talk about the life cycle of APT attacks. So life cycle is like first only the reconnaissance. So reconnaissance, that's a part of the information gathering. I think you all aware about the reconnaissance term. So what is the objective behind reconnaissance? In this initial phase, this is the initial phase where the APT attackers gather information about their target. Their objective is to understand the target's infrastructure, their system, their personal and their personal information, right? And any vulnerabilities that are already inside the target system. So that's why the attackers, the APT attackers or the threat actors going to perform a reconnaissance. That the first phase of the APT lifecycle, right? So they are going to use various tools like OSINT tools and the recon tools to collect all the information, whatever the information they can collect about the target organization, okay, their network, their application, or uh, whatever the stuffs related to the organization, right? So OSINT is one of the way to perform or to collect information about the target. So what exactly they are doing to perform reconnaissance? So they are using open source intelligence tools. They are scanning the public facing systems, like with the help of Nmap, with the help of Sodan search engine, whatever the publicly available and accessible information on the internet, on the dark web. So from the various platforms, they are going to collect information about the target. The second phase, that the initial compromise. So the objective behind the initial compromise is that to gain an initial foothold within the target network or system. So here the attacker use spear phishing, emails, waterhole attacks, or exploit the vulnerabilities to gain entry, right? Once the attacker inside the system, they are going to maintain access. So the initial compromise is all about the exploitation part, where the attacker going to exploit the target system to gain the initial access. Whatever the information they collect on the first page with the help of posting tool, with the help of recon and footprinting tools, with the help of a dark web, with the help of Google hacking database, right? So whatever the information they collected from the page one, they are going to use that information to compromise the target system. So there they are going to break down the security. They are going to exploit the known or the unknown vulnerabilities to get inside your system. Now, once they are inside the system, they are going to perform the phase number 3. That's about the establishing the persistence, or you can say maintaining access. So in the establishing persistence, what their objective? So their objective or APT attackers objective is to work to ensure they can maintain access to the compromised system or network for an extended period until and unless they are going to fulfill their objective, their requirement. So continuously they are going to maintain the access. So what they are doing to maintain the access, they are going to perform the or establish a persistence. So they can install backdoors, they can install the rootkits or other persistent malware that enable them to return and continue their operations even if detected and removed temporarily. If the organization successfully detect that someone inside our network, some intrusion inside the our network, so they are simply going to block you, right? But instead of that activity done by the organization, you can still maintain the access in the target network. How? With the help of these activities like installing backdoors and rootkits and other malware that will give you the like with the help of that you can create a backdoor, and with the help of backdoor you can enter into the target system whenever you require, right? Even the main door is closed by the organization. The next one is the escalation of privileges. So escalation of privilege, that means you are going to escalate the privilege. Privilege simply means permission. So if you guys are aware about the Linux terms, so there we have three kind of permissions, like we have a read, write, and execute permission, right? So let's suppose there is a file X, and the file X can only be read by the root user. The group member or the other user will not be able to read the file, or will able to write the file or execute the file, since we have three kind of permission: read, write, and execute. So let's suppose you are inside the target system and there is a file, there is a very confidential file. You have to read the file anyhow, but you don't have the permission to read the file, right? Only the root user can read the file. Now, on that case, you are going to perform page number 4, that the escalation of privilege. So you are going to escalate your privilege. If you don't have the permission, you will try to get the privilege called read permission, write permission, or execute permission. Right? We have two kind of privilege escalation, that the horizontal and the vertical privilege escalation, right? So where we try to become someone's having more privilege, having more permission as compared to the current user, or you can try to become the root user, because the root user is simply like a king of the system. He or she can do anything inside the system. There is no permission for the root user since he is the king of the system, right? So you have two approach to perform escalation of privilege or privilege escalation. The first one is that you have to become someone having more privilege as compared to you, right? Or second option is that you have to become a root user, because once you become the root user, you can access any files, any directory. And next one is the internal reconnaissance and lateral movement, right? Now the first page was the reconnaissance, right? So reconnaissance, that means you are going to collect information about the organizations. But in the phase number 5, we have internal reconnaissance. So in the internal reconnaissance, that means you are already inside the target network and you are going to perform information gathering part inside the network. Let's suppose you are inside a system, right? Now you are going to explore all the directory. You are going to explore the home directory, the root directory, the etc directory. So that's also part of the reconnaissance, because what you are doing, you are trying to perform the trying to collect the information. You are trying to collect the CPU utilization, whatever the process running there, how many accounts there, right? How many users there? Is there any remote control there or not, right? What their history, what their logs. So that's something comes under the internal reconnaissance. And the lateral movement. So lateral movement, that's already we covered, where you are trying to change the directory from one directory to another directory, right? Inside the target network, when you are inside the system, inside the network. So that's your phase number 5. Now the phase number 6 is all about the data collection and exfiltration. So in phase number 6, the objective of the attackers is to focus on their primary goal, which may include data theft, espionage, or intellectual property too. So their main objective is to data collection and exfiltration, right? So what they can do for to perform data collection and exfiltration. So they collect sensitive information such as documents, credentials, or financial data, and use like yeah, and they can exfiltrate the data without detection, right? So let's suppose they are inside the target system, inside your system, and they are going to collect the information of the Saurabh file that contain the hash of the password inside the Linux directory, inside the etc directory of the Linux file system, right? So they are going to collect the hash so that they can break down the password of the connected user. So whatever the user's account that already present there, right? So they can collect the information. Even let's suppose there are some of the credentials information, some of the confidential information there. So they can try to copy the information from there. They can try to download the information from there, right, based on the objective. The next one is the maintaining stealth and persistence, right? So it's all about the living inside the target system and maintaining the persistence. So here, the objective of the APT attackers is to avoid the detection. All the organizations using having a cybersecurity team, they have the vulnerability scanner, right? They have IPS ideas so that they can detect if any ongoing, even nowadays they are using threat intelligence, right? So whatever the ongoing attacks or uh, occurring attacks in the target system, so they are able to detect that, right? So in the phase number 7, they are trying to perform attack, right? They are performing the offensive part while considering the defensive part as well, right? So the APT attacker performing dealing with both kind of a side like the offensive and the defensive side, right? So they are protecting themselves so that the organization will not able to detect them. Along with that, they are also performing attack, right? So what they can do to perform this activity? So there are various evident techniques such as encryption, anti-forensic tools to stay hidden. The attackers also closely monitor security systems and adjust their tactics accordingly, right? So they can continuously they can monitor your system that what exactly you are doing. They can might be possible that they can monitor the SOC department because the SOC department is responsible to monitor 24/7 whatever the malicious activities happening in the target in the network, right? Now the next one is the phase number 8. That's all about the covering track and anti-forensics. So here the objective of the attacker is to minimize the chance of detection. So the attackers may attempt to erase or manipulate the evidence of their presence. They will going to deal with the log file. They are going to erase the log file. They are going to manipulate the log files. So for that, they have to perform some anti-forensic activities, some anti-forensic techniques, right? So the covering tracks and anti-forensics phase, it include the deleting the log file or manipulating the log files, you can say. In the phase number 9, that's the exfiltration and final objectives. So they are the attackers or the APT attackers. So they are going to execute their like a main objective, their final objective, you can see. All right. So whatever the final objective they have, so they are going to execute on the target network or the system or the application, right? So that include the exfiltration of stolen data or carry out any planned disruptive action. So let's suppose their plan is like once we download the data, we have to disrupt their system. We have to crash their system by performing any DOS attack or any DDoS attack. So that's something they are going to carry out in the phase number 9. In the phase number 10, they are going to retreat and future planning. So here the objective is like the APT attackers, they are going to decide to retreat the temporarily to avoid detection or countermeasures, right? So whatever the activities what they can perform to perform retreat and future planning. So that may they can perform removing the tools and back tools, right? Analyze their success and failures and plan for future attacks or continued operations. So these are the total life cycle, total 10 phase of the life cycle of an APT attacks from the reconnaissance to the retreat and future planning, right? So from the very starting, like let me recap the entire life cycle. So the attacker first going to collect information about you, then after they are going to exploit the vulnerability, whatever the information they collect in the page number 1. Once they are inside your system, they are going to maintain access, they are going to escalate the privilege, they are going to perform lateral movement, and then after they will move on to their objective where they will collect and exfiltrate the data. They can maintain the persistence in the system by securing themselves from the detection part. They are going to cover the tracks using the log files to minimize the chance of detection, right? They are going to perform exfiltration and final objective, right? And the last one is the retreat and future planning. So these are the overall life cycle of the APT attacks that performed by the threat actors. Now let's talk about some of the notable APT attacks that happened in the past. So we have Stuxnet, we have Titan Rain, we have APT 28 that we known as Fancy Beer, and APT 29 that we known as Koji Beer. Uh, we have Sony Picture Hack, we have NotePT attack. So these are the common, not the common, they are the well-known APT attacks you can see in the history, right? We all aware about the Stuxnet. So if we talk about the Stuxnet, so that was the sophisticated computer worm that discovered in year 2010, right? It was believed that it was a collaboration between the United States and the Israel, right? So their primary target was Iran nuclear program. So this Stuxnet create a massive destruction in the industry, right? Not just on the digital level, but also on the physical level. So their main target was the Iran nuclear program. Uh, Mainly, they target the uranium enrichment facilities at place like one of the state, one of the area in Iran that the Natanz, I think so, right? So that was the primary target of the Stuxnet. Now let's come to the detection and mitigation strategies against the APT attack. So how you are going to mitigate the risk of the APT attack, right? Just remember one thing, like whatever you are doing in the cybersecurity industry, whatever you are doing in cybersecurity domain, it's all about risk. Whether you are performing ethical hacking, whether you are performing penetration testing or vulnerability assessment or cloud pen testing, cloud security, network security. So whatever you are doing in cybersecurity domain, the main objective is to mitigate the risk or to eliminate the risk. If there is no risk, if there is no fear of data loss, then no any organization or company will going to hire you, right? So the main thing, the main objective behind cybersecurity in the industry, in the organization, in the corporate is to mitigate the risk, right? So let's talk about how to mitigate this risk of APT. Like normally we can detect any attack with the help of vulnerability scanner. Like we have automated scanners like OpenVAS, like Nessus tools, right? So they are the automated tools that they can detect the known vulnerability, right? The main thing is to understand here that the vulnerability scanner like Nessus and OpenVAS, they can only detect the known vulnerability, not the unknown vulnerability, right? If there is a 0-day vulnerability, then that cannot be detected by the Nessus tool or by the OpenVAS tool or any automated tools, right? Since the signature is not available in their database, signature of the unknown vulnerability that newly discovered, you can say just discovered by you at, at this moment, like right now it's 3:39 p.m. So at 3:39 p.m. you are going to discover a vulnerability that's unknown to the world. No one is know about that. There is no patch available. There is no signature available in any database. There is no CVE number, no report, no exploit available in the exploit DB database, right? So that's completely unknown to the market, completely unknown in the market, right, in the industry. So that something will not be detected by the automated scanner, right? Now, how to deal with that? Because the APT attack going to use the unknown vulnerability, they are going to use the 0-day vulnerability, right? So the unknown vulnerability or the 0-day vulnerability is directly or indirectly connected with the APT attack because the threat actors, they are going to use unknown vulnerability or you can say the 0-day vulnerability to perform APT attack, right? So if any threat actor going to use the unknown vulnerability, then how the security team, then how the SOC team, how the defensive team of the organization going to detect that there is a APT attack or there is not exactly the APT attack, that any attack happening in our system, right? Because since it's a unknown vulnerability, it's an unknown exploit, right? So for that, we have some mitigation techniques. Like first, you have to understand the APT life cycle. APT life cycle that we just learned here, right? The total 10 phase of the APT life cycle. So the APT life cycle is not just for the attacker; it's also for the defensive side as well. Let's take example of the phase number one, that the reconnaissance. So reconnaissance can be useful for both for the attacker as well and for the security team as well. So the reconnaissance, the attacker will going to use reconnaissance to collect information about the target organization. On the other hand, the security team can also use reconnaissance. How they can use reconnaissance? So what they can do, so they can reverse the same thing. Like they can create a honeypot, they can create a decoy system, right? and they can like intentionally they are going to leak some of the secret information, some of the private information on the public database, like on the Google, you can say on the dark web, right? So what they are doing, they are creating a honeypot. Honeypot is something that's apart from your real network, they are going to create a fake network, right? And they are going to they are going to leak some of the information that's related to the honeypot, but that seems like the information is related to your organization. Now, when the attacker is going to perform recon, so while perform the reconnaissance, they will able to find out that information. Now, on that information might be the information is like a IP address. Now, the attacker thinks that this IP address is the real one. Now, the attacker going to get inside the system with the help of that IP address. And as soon as the attacker get inside the system, that the system is not the real system, that's a honeypot, and the security team will able to detect that this is the attacker, this is the attack, right? So reconnaissance or the entire life cycle of the APT attack is not just beneficial for the attacker, but also beneficial for the security team as well. So understanding the APT life cycle by the security team is one of the way to mitigate the risk, to mitigate the APT attack. Now the next one is the implementing a defense in depth approach. Now what is defense in depth approach? So in defense in depth, we are not just rely on a single detection system. We are not simply rely on a firewall or on a IPS or IDs. We are going to implement a lot of security measures like antivirus, the anti-malware, the endpoint detection system. Okay. So whatever the physical system or whatever the like software, whatever the strategy they can implement, so that something comes under the defense in depth. And next one is the threat intelligence and information sharing. So threat intelligence, that's one of the best way to detect APT attack. As I told you that we have known and unknown vulnerability. So for the known vulnerabilities, the patch is already available in the market. The signature is already updated in the automated scanners. So they are able to detect the known vulnerability. If any attacker trying to get inside your system with the known vulnerability, then the scanner or the uh, if like you can say like even the security team, they are also aware about the known vulnerability, so they can detect that it's a known vulnerability and we are aware about that. But what in the case of unknown vulnerability? So in the case of unknown vulnerability, we have some options like you can go with threat intelligence. So threat intelligence, they are collecting information from various sources. They are collecting the information, gathering the information, and on the basis of the information, they are going to create some insight that will going to predict that can help you out to know that any ongoing attack, any ongoing vulnerabilities that's inside your system. You can say threat intelligence is like your IB, like your CBI or in the real world. If you can relate with a real world example, so it's like that your army personnel or the policeman. So they are like the vulnerability scanner. So they are simply going to detect the known vulnerability. They are going to deal with the known criminals in the real world. But what about the unknown criminals who are not like this army personnel or the policeman? They are not aware about them. They are not aware about what they are planning. So on that case, we have RAW, we have CBI, right? We have IB, Intelligence Bureau. So they are working upon that. Their main task is to use the intelligence to collect the information that what's exactly happening with the attacker, what they are planning, what they can do, right? What their objective, what's their intentions. On the basis of that, what they are going to predict that on the next day, on the next month, there might be attack on Delhi, there might be an attack on Mumbai. Right? In the same way, the threat intelligence perform the same thing. The threat intelligence is going to collect, gather, and create insight from that information, and going to predict, going to let you know the ongoing or the future attack. Right? Next one is the network monitoring and the anomaly detection. So network monitoring, where you are continuously going to enable the IPS IDs, firewall, and continuously monitoring with the help of SOC team or individually as well. Right? So that any non-vulnerability or any signature, any intrusion can be detected. It will at a point it will going to mitigate or patch the vulnerability, right, or eliminate the vulnerability, you can say. And next one is the behavioral analysis. So what we mean by the behavioral analysis, so you can say like on the basis of the behavior, that means on the basis of the signature, you are going to respond over the attack. So that involves the behavior analysis, that involves the like studying the patterns and the behaviors of users, that simply you can say the signatures, to detect the anomaly or sign of the compromise. So whatever the signature you are going to detect, so you are going to work upon that, you are going to eliminate that, you are trying to mitigate that, right? We have a multi-factor authentication, we have a regular audits and pen testing, we have endpoint isolation and containment zone, we have incident response plan, and the most important is the user training and the awareness part, where you are going to train your uh, 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 like train your workers, you're going to create a awareness in your organization so that every employee in the organization is aware about that this kind of activities, this kind of attack can be happen. This would have to be aware. You can teach them about the phishing attack so that they are not going to click on any random link, right? So these are some of the methods that we can implement to mitigate the risk of the APT attack, to deal with the APT attack. Now, finally, we have the future trends, the future of the APT attack. So that can be like AI powered APT, like AI everywhere nowadays, right? So with the help of AI, you can automate the attacks, right? We have 5G network vulnerabilities. This is the age of Starlink. We are dealing with the satellite internet, right? So even if you are going to perform APT attack there, so you are directly connected with the ISP provider, and there from there you can steal a lot of information about the users, the end users. Supply chain attacks you can perform in the future, supply chain attacks. The IoT and the OT targeting, nowadays everything is connected with the internet, whether it's about a bulb, it's about the a smart refrigerator or the AC. So everything is connected with the internet. So what is the IoT device? Like any device that we can connect with the internet, that they can communicate with the help of internet, and we can control remotely. So that's your IoT device, right? So we have the concept of smart house, we have the concept of smart doors, right? So if someone's perform APT attack on the IoT device, so they are living in your system, they are living in your house as well. The quantum computing threats. So if we talk about the quantum computing threat, that so there they are performing some research activity related to encryption decryption algorithm. So if the attacker able to perform APT attack, and they have the access of the quantum computing, quantum computers, so they can find out a lot of techniques behind how to encrypt and decrypt. So there will be no meaning of encryption and decryption there, right? Cloud-based attacks. So nowadays everything shipped on the cloud, the entire industry running on the cloud, right? So if someone's able to perform APT attack on the cloud, so there they can make a presence on the cloud for a extended duration, for a long period of time, right? So from there they can perform a lot of attacks, whatever the connected device, whatever the connected networks on the cloud. So we have a different kind of cloud models. So if you are using the private clouds, so they can infect your private asset, whatever the software or whatever the networks you are using. If you are using hybrid or the community cloud models, so there one APT attack can perform a lot of attacks on the connected networks, right? Because on the community and on the hybrid cloud, you are not just connected with a single uh, what I can say, like a single infrastructure. A lot of organizations connected together, right? So one single attack on the cloud can compromise a lot of different organization systems and network, right? So that's all about the future of the APT attack, right? So that's all from my end. If you guys have any doubt, any questions regarding the APT attack, you can ask me.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Saurav, for such an insightful session on APTs. I can see few questions in the chat. I will just read it out for you. The first question is by Abhishek. How to detect these attacks? I think you had a proper slide, and before that, Abhishek asked this question. So, can you give like a very brief overview of how to detect these attacks?
Okay. So detecting a normal attack is easy, but detecting a APT attack is not that much easy as compared to a normal or traditional attack. So you can't detect a APT attack just with the help of a normal vulnerability scanner or with a normal approach. For that, these are the methods, like you have to understand the APT life cycle, that will be helpful for you. The main thing that you can implement is the threat intelligence and threat hunting approach. So that will be helpful for you to detect the APT attacks that's happening in your organizations in your network, right?
Thank you.
Apart from that, we have total 10 detection and mitigation strategy for APT attack.
So this question is from Ankit. As a student, how to get started in APT?
Can you clarify the question? Like it's about attacking somewhere with the help of APT, or detecting the APT, or dealing with APT?
Yeah, both. He's asking from both. Like as a complete beginner, if you're a student, like what would be your suggestion?
What I can recommend you that you can go to something called Google Scholar. If you heard about the Google Scholar, so that's a platform by Google where you will find out the research paper by the researcher, right? So the best way to learn about the APT attack is from the research paper, right? Because normally you will not find that much videos or the articles about APT attack on the Google, on the YouTube. So what you can do, you can go to Google Scholar. There you can search about the APT attack, and from there you can download a lot of research paper, and from there you can start reading about the APT attack.
Okay. So Ankit has a follow up on that. Like if you're a student, like what to start first, attack or defense?
Okay. So there is a saying that to catch a thief, we have to think like a thief, right? चोर को पकड़ने के लिए चोर की तरह सोचना पड़ता है. So if you are a fresher, if you want to start your career in the domain of cybersecurity, right, then you should have to start from the offensive side, so that you are aware about that what kind of attacks we have. If you are already aware about that what kind of attacks, what the attacker can do, then it's easy for you to create a strategy. It's easy for you to defend against that kind of attack. So I will recommend you to start with the from the offensive side rather than defensive.
Thank you, Saurav. I think you have already mentioned that there are not a lot of resources, and you have to study from research paper mainly. Still, do you have anything else, any website or anything, any blog or any YouTube video which you would like to recommend? Any good resource which really helped you?
I have some books that I can recommend you. Like, so what I will do, like after this session, I will share the resource with you. You can share with them in the group.
Sure, sure.
That's
We
something we
also
can
have
do.
like a WhatsApp group. You can share it there as well with everyone.
Yeah, sure.
There's another question by Abhishek. Any recommended tools, like some of the most popular tools
Tools for what?
for APT,
To
which are
perform
used in APT? Yeah, maybe in offensive side.
Okay, so APT is not just about the tools, it's a entire strategy, it's a plan, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just based on the tool. Like if you asking about the tool that play a great role in APT, right? So we have a lot of tools like to perform, like here already I mentioned there. Uh, Let me show you. Here are the list of the tools used by the APT attacks. So we have exploitation tools. So there I mentioned tools like Metasploit, we have Bob Suite. So that's something you can like you can go with the Metasploit framework. That's a great tool. Even in the cybersecurity domain, we call it the crush of the hacker. So the Metasploit framework is known as the crush of the hacker because you can perform the entire 5 phase of the ethical hacking just with the help of a single framework. That's the Metasploit framework. You can perform information gathering. You can perform gaining access, exploitation, maintaining access, post exploitation, right? Clearing logs. So whatever the things you would like to do, you can perform with the help of a single framework. That's your Metasploit framework. So you can go with Metasploit framework. You can learn Metasploit framework. That will be good for you.
That's quite helpful. I can see some thank yous. So Ankit and Sid have written thank you. Any more question, guys? Any question you can write down in the chat.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, as Saurav said earlier, that there is an attack type in which an attacker can use systems, softwares, and apps to collect data. Ma'am, how is it possible?
Okay, how is it possible? So just assume that you bypass a system, you bypass an operating system. Let's suppose you have a remote access of my Linux machine, right? Just assume. I'm not going to give you my password or my credentials. You crack the password, you are inside my target, you are inside my system with the remote access, right? Now, whatever the tools pre-installed in my system, let's suppose tools like uh, OpenVAS or tools like Nessus, that's pre-installed in my system. So what you are going to do, you are going to use the Nessus tool to scan the internal IP address. You scan the internal system. So what will happen if we are going to scan the internal system, then you are able to find out the internal vulnerability. So that will help you out.
But
Getting my point?
every system has, yes, I got your point. But my question is, every system has mainly two layers of security, na? One main system firewall, and another, every app has its own security. So when let us assume that an attacker bypasses the system firewall, but when it comes to using an internal app, so the attacker still has to bypass the app security now.
Exactly. So that's why we have the phase here, escalation of privileges, right? So here, like in context of the Linux, I told you that we have read, write, and execute permission, right? And in case you don't have any permission to read the file, you don't have any permission to access the file, then what you are doing, you are performing this phase, escalation of privilege. In case of firewall, right, you are talking about the internal firewall. So the attackers going to bypass the firewall, going to evade the firewall, whether it's internal or external.
Means that attacker have to perform either of the two methods, either to gain the root access or to find a vulnerability.
Not exactly about the root access or find a vulnerability. Like it's about the phase one recon. That's clear. Initial compromise, that means initial access, right? Once you are inside the system, you are going to perform maintaining access, right? But you are inside the system, it doesn't mean that you have access to the entire system.
Okay.
There is something called permission management, right? So permission management is a term used in the corporate sector, right? So we have different kind of employees, right? On the same server, we have graphic designer, we have software developer, we have admin, we have manager, right? So we can't give all the access to everyone. We can't give similar access to everyone. That's not possible. Let's suppose for the graphic designer, we can only give the read and write permission, not to the all the file, just for the directory that contains the designs, right? If we have software developers, so we can give the execute permission since they require the execution process, right? But for the admin, for the manager, they have the full access. So that's something called permission management, that on the basis of the role, on the basis of the job profile, we are assigning the permission, right? Now let's suppose you are inside the system as a normal user, not as a root user. You crack the password as a normal user. You are inside the system. But it doesn't mean that you are inside the system. That means you are able to access any files, you are able to go anywhere. That's not possible. So that's why we have the page of escalation of privilege, where we are going to escalate our privilege. We are going to break down the rules you have upon you, right? We're going to break down the permissions, whatever the permission applicable for you. So you are going to break down the permission. In case of firewall, the firewall blocking your request, right? Let's suppose you are trying to share something, you are trying to send some data from the internal system to the external system. At this point, at the page number 3, you are inside the system, right? Now you are trying to send data from the internal system to the external system, but the firewall is blocking you. That's where you are going to bypass the firewall. You have to evade the firewall. So that's something covered in page number 4.
Okay, I got the point. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
Any more questions?
No, thank you, sir.
So I think that's it for today's. Saurav, thank you so much. Abhishek has written thank you for this great session. So I can see some thank you messages in the chat. So thank you once again, Saurav, for joining us and delivering such an insightful session. We all have greatly benefited from it. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Alia, and thank you to the entire VAS partner team. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share something about the APT attacks. And thanks for everyone to hear me for a duration of 1 hour. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Just take care. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Saurav.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Take care.